So next we're going to be moving on to step 3, and step 3 is we will be stitching up the side seams, also known as the out seams in terminology. So if you look at the instruction for step 3, it says pin front to back at side seams matching large dots. Stitch the side seams, leaving an opening between the large dots. Backstitch at the large dots to reinforce seams. Stitch pocket edges together from side seam to upper edge. So there's going to be 2 steps. The first is you're going to sew up this side seam here, and you're going to start at the tippity top and you're going to sew all the way to the first dot, and you're going to put a big fat knot there. And then this part you're leaving blank, and then starting at that dot you have a big fat knot, and then you're going to sew all the way down to the bottom of the pants. And then so you're going to actually have an opening in here. So note here, now you're at 5/8 of an inch. Your seam for the side seam is going to be 5/8 of an inch. After you've stitched that, then you're going to also have to stitch around the perimeter of your pocket, because you don't want your Kleenex to fall out of the bottom of the pocket. So you're also going to be sewing around like this. And this also is going to be at 5/8 of an inch, and then you have that little notch down there that you can line up to make sure that your pocket is arranged properly. So following the instructions of the directions, I'm going to take my pant back and I'm going to attach it to my pant front with right sides together. You can tell the wrong side from the right side because the wrong side has the stitching, and then the right side, it's clean. So the 2 clean, pretty sides are going to be facing each other. And then I'm sewing up the side seam. I'm not going to sew through the pocket. I'm just going to sew from the ankle all the way up to the pocket here where the dot is, and then I'm going to put a knot there, and then I'm going to sew where the other dot is all the way up to the top of the pajama pants waist. And while the pocket seam was stitched on at 3/8 of an inch, this time I'm going to be stitching at 5/8 of an inch. So where that dot is at 5/8 of an inch, so I'm going to be continuing that line from the dot to the waist and from the dot all the way down. Again, it's very helpful to pin the dots together. So this time you have the dot in the pants back. I'm going to pin that through, all the way through to the dot in the pants front. See, it's a little bit off, so that's corrected right here. I'm going to pin that in place. I'm going to do the same for the other dot right here. Oh, it's a little bit off. I'm going to pin it here. Okay, so I have that. So now I know that the pants are are consistently placed front to back. And now I just have to line up the edges of the front and back like so, and line up the edges front and back on the lower part of the side seam too. So now I'm going to stitch it, and instead of using my 3/8 inch gauge, I'm going to switch it to my 5/8 inch gauge. So I'm starting where the dot is and at 5/8 of an inch, and I'm going to sew from the dot all the way up to the top of the waistband. So here's the dot. I might take a little back stitch because that's where your hands go in, and so you really want to make sure that you don't tear out that pocket hole when you dig your hands into your pocket. So I'm sewing this up, nice tiny stitches, 5/8 of an inch, is that right? A little bit south. I'll try to head up a little bit farther. Okay, so that's the top part. I'm going to make a little knot here. And now all I have to do is stitch from this dot all the way down to the end of the ankles. what I'll just do, I'm making a knot. I'm just going to flip this around so I can do this all in one go. So what might happen is you might run out of thread if you don't pull like a really long 2-yard piece of thread. You might run out of thread before you get to the ankle part. And if that happens, just knot it off in the middle of the seam and then cut yourself a new piece of thread and continue. So I'm stitching here. Looks a little too small. So I'm not gonna go back though. So I'm just gonna veer out a bit more until I have my 5/8 of an inch. You see how I'm picking like 5 stitches at a time? And here's 5/8, and that's much better. So I'm just gonna keep going here till I get to the end. Ha, that's like 3/4 of the way down still, but you can do it. If you have to go a little bit slower than me, that's okay. I have a lot of experience. So I'm sewing to here, and I have this much left. Okay, so I'm going to sew that off camera, and I'll see you when I get to like around here. So here I ran out of thread. You see I knotted it off, so I just have to stitch, thread some more thread up and stitch to the end. So I don't need, you can kind of guess sometimes, like that's how much I need, times 2 plus a little bit extra. It doesn't always work that way, because if you have like lumpy fabric, then the stitches take more thread. But there we go. I'm just going to stitch this to the bottom, and then I'm going to do the same thing for the left side of the pants, if this is the right side of the pants. And I have my seam gauge again, and so it's at 5/8 of an inch. I'm just going to continue where I left off, and it should be 5/8 of an inch. Oop. Almost. And you got to go all the way down to the bottom, because when you hem the pants, if you don't have it even at the bottom, it's going to be more difficult to hem it. So I'm done here. Tie it off, make sure it's nice and smooth. Tie it off with a knot. And there it is. So that's the left side. It could be the right side of my pants. And now I'm going to do the same thing to the other side.